I think we're on the cusp of an investment boom. And I think that we've already started to see in expectations of the tax changes and the regulatory rollbacks. So the NFIB is talking about huge red-hot job hiring, particularly in manufacturing and industry. Some of the reports on factory orders and durable goods are showing a pickup in CapEx. It's the first time in many, many years that we've seen that. Even the jobs report today had a nice jump in manufacturing. So this is all good. And I think when they pull the trigger, when the bill gets done, and I assume it's going to be done favorably, all people are asking good questions. I mean, what's the rate going to be? When's the corporate rate going to kick in? I don't think we should wait to 2019 at all. What about the repatriation rules? You got a chance here to repatriate $3 trillion, let's say at an average tax rate of 10%. So that's $300 billion plus. Those revenues, comma, Diane, comma, should be included. They should be scored. The Joint Tax Committee, from repatriation, starts out the first couple years at 12 some odd billion dollars, and in the middle years of the 10-year window goes down to $7 or $8 billion dollars. That is utter. You're going to get several hundreds of billions of revenues in the first year or two, which will finance all this little squabbling between, the internals of the Republican Party.
And by the way,
You shouldn't have used that. You said correctly, we've got to change the process, the filibuster process. You're exactly right. But in the spirit of Donald Trump, who wants to drain the swamp, we've got swamps. We've got the Joint Tax Committee swamp. We've got the CBO swamp. I think we should drain those swamps. Just get rid of them. That's all. Get rid of them.
by the way,
It's costing us. Listen, we love you. We love you. We're going to support you. I already pledged allegiance to you during breakfast. But you should have used a 3% growth rate for the 10-year window.
3.5.
All right, he's right, but I'd take 3. At 3, you pick up, let's say 3 versus 1, 9. All right, so let's just say 3 versus 2.
Can I interject here for just
Hang on a second.
For 1 second.
I ain't done yet. Hold on a second. I just want to say, you would have picked up over $3 trillion, which I call the mother of all pay-fors. If you had done that, we can get rid of SALT, which everybody wants to get rid of. But Steve Forbes is right. We forgot to cut the personal tax rate. We can get rid of a lot of this nix and nack stuff. Growth finances everything, and you just can't tell me. And I implore Arthur here. You can't tell me that this kind of radical business tax cuts will not generate a percentage point more than 2. Moreover, won't get us back to the long-run path of American economic history, which is about 3.5% growth. If we'd have done that, it would have paid for the deficit would be coming down. It's not a matter of curbing it; it would come down. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Art, or Steve, or Yal.
No, let me just say, if I can, from January 1st, 1983,
right.
to June 30th, 1984. That's is that 18 months? Did I get that right?
More or less.
It's a year and a half period. U.S. real GDP. Now, January 1st, 1983 is when President Reagan's tax cuts actually took effect. In that 18-month period, U.S. real GDP growth was. Real GDP growth in that 18-month period was 12%.
Wow.
The U.S. economy grew at an average annual compound rate of 8% for a year and a half.
Wow.
That solves lots of problems. You wusses over here who are talking about 3.5% and 4%. And if you think those good growth rates were good, you should go back to Kennedy. Now, I just read a book on Kennedy by a friend of mine who wrote it. And the growth rates were really high then, too. What, he had 3 6-month periods of over 6%?
Yeah, and actually,
so did Reagan.
By the way, what was the name of that book?
The name of that book was Larry Kudlow and Brian Dimitrovic discover truth.
JFK and the Reagan Revolution.
That's exactly what it
Thank
was.
you.
Yes,
You
JFK.
can, you can click right through on Amazon.com.
Oh, now it-
One click.
By the way, this is a paid commercial. It's a great book, by the way, if you get a chance.
Thank you. Steve Forbes. You
Well,
were gonna chime in.
about that book, what it shows is how Kennedy grew. When he came into office, he knew what he wanted to do, get the economy moving. He didn't know how to do it. And despite a lot of liberals around him, he came to those very much Mellon-like, Coolidge-like
Doug-
supply-side tax cuts.
Douglas
Doug
Dillon.
Dillon, Secretary of the Treasury.
Right,
But Kennedy
Republican.
learned. But by the way, in terms of a CBO Joint Tax Committee, the thing to remember is if these people actually knew the future, they would not be working for the CBO and the Joint Tax Committee. They'd be buying lottery tickets, they'd be speculating in commodities, they wouldn't be working for the government, I'll tell you that.
So I just put up this. Can you put up the, just show this? This is from your book, Larry. And it's just all economics, all tax policy is reduced to this statement by the great John F. Kennedy, a Democrat. By the way, I know this is a nonpartisan organization. I'm not a rah-rah Republican, but shame on the Democratic Party. Not one single Democrat in the House or Senate voted for the biggest tax cut since Reagan. It is a paradoxical truth that rates are too high and revenues are too low, and the soundest way to raise the revenues in the long run is to cut the rates. I mean, is that beautiful or what? So that is the whole philosophy behind this. I wanted to make one point about this repatriation. You know, one of the complaints, this is the Trump economy. There's no question about it. The economy is sizzling hot. It started with that 700-point increase in the Dow Jones the day after the election. By the way, our good friend Paul Krugman, remember what he said at 8 a.m. the day after the election on MSNBC? He was asked, when is the stock market going to recover? And he said, never. And he's the guru of the left. But in any case, we've seen this huge increase in stocks. Investors love this tax cut. But I hear over and over again, oh, the stock market is just for rich people. It's only the rich people benefit. Ladies and gentlemen, how many of you in this room have a 401k plan? Raise your hand. 55 million Americans have 401k plans. Another 35 million Americans, Steve, have IRAs, and another 28 million have corporate pension plans. Where do you think that money is invested? And incidentally, a lot of you are concerned, as you should be, about your state pension plans and the fact that you have huge unfunded liabilities. I think a gigantic stock market boom is going to help those pension funds quite a bit. So this is when you have the stock market booming, you're going to get more jobs, you're going to get more investment. By the way, investment has already picked up in the corporate sector.
I think so. The biggest haters of capitalism and pro-growth supply-side tax reform are the government unions.
Yep.
And I'll single out the teachers union. All right? It's not the teachers, but the union leadership. They are going to be possibly the biggest beneficiaries of the stock market boom.
You got it.
Because you're right. About a third of this stuff runs through pensions, and the pensions are essentially about 3/4 invested in the stock market. So the irony is the private sector and the stock market is financing their pensions when it is hopelessly out of line right now. They're going to be bailed out by the Trump stock market. I find that ironic, but I think it's a point that's never made, should be made.
One
We
quick
make it all
point,
the
because
time.
this is state lawmakers, and it is so important. I think that one of the three biggest factors that make this a great bill, the 20% corporate tax rate and the lowering the business rates, you mentioned it, Arthur, ladies and gentlemen, getting rid of the individual mandate tax penalty Obamacare is a slow motion Obamacare repeal.
It is.
It's a slow motion Obamacare repeal. And finally, the third thing that is not getting enough attention, and you all have to focus on this like a laser beam next year because it's going to change your world. Getting rid of the state and local tax deduction at the federal level is going to change everything at the state and local level. And why is that? Because right now, when you provide a dollar of government services, either at the state or local level in terms of government, your taxpayers in your state only pay 70 cents for that. Now they're going to pay the full dollar. You're going to see, you guys helped launch Proposition 13. I think once you see this end of the state and local tax deduction, you're going to see tax revolts around the country. Yeah. And you're going to have to provide your citizens with better service at lower cost. And it's also, anybody here from New York or California? A few of you. I hate to tell you this, but either you're going to have to get out of that state or they're going to have to dramatically lower the tax rates. Or Connecticut.